Welcome back to Direct Edition, a podcast about nothing and everything. I'm your host, Dave, and I'm presenting to you today an interview with the great Sanford Greene. Sanford Greene is a comic book artist by trade. He has worked on series like Power Man and Iron Fist, the hip-hop variant covers for Marvel, the Great Doom one-shot that came out last year, and his creator-owned series with David F. Walker and Chuck Brown, Bitterroot. But this conversation is a lot more about just everything revolving his career and also a lot about his teaching, which he is a teacher at Benedict College, his alma mater. So we talk a lot about education. We talk about the state of the world. We talk a lot about his intro to comics, influences, music. It's just another one of these conversations that I like having with artists where we touch on their career, but we go a different route to get there. Sanford is a fantastic person. I met him at OAX in Orlando this year. He was somebody that watched the channel and I didn't know it. And I was like, whoa, because I kind of wanted to have him on the channel after I read the Doom one shot. So, stars align or something like that. Before we get started, if you are not subscribed to this podcast, please do so. It does really help boost my morale in people listening to this. But if you comment or you review it, it helps it boost it to strangers that don't know the madness of Dave. And it's been a great string of interviews in the last couple of months, with Scheme and Alex and Jim Ward and Sean Crystal. So I want to keep it going. And the way to keep it going is to just reach out to people and be like, look, I interviewed this person. Enough about me and this stupid podcast. Let's talk to Sanford Greene. All right, friends, welcome back to Direct Edition and a special guest with us today. I'm just pounding away the pavement with special guests. Ringo and Eisner Award winner, comic artist, obviously, but not just that. He's also worked in animation. He's worked with musicians. He's worked in a lot of different fields. Worked on Power Man Iron Fist. A little bit of the brainchild of the hip-hop variant covers. And he's not bitter, but he is a co-creator on Bitterroot. And that is Sanford Greene. Sanford, how are you?
Hanging in there, man. Doing pretty good, man.
Yeah, I mean, I assume you're not bitter, but you might be. I mean, it's 2025 and there's a lot to be bitter about.
I'll be honest with you. That's why I'm doing the book, so that I won't get bitter. It's therapeutic, man.
You touched on something that is a through line through probably the last 5 podcasts is art as therapy and art as, a way to talk.
Yeah.
And, it's something that's super important to me, even though I'm not an artist. I think like you, especially in music, I've always used it to kind of, use other people's art to kind of focus my feelings.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you what, man. I mean, I'm grateful to be creative. I think this is an important time for creatives, in every type of interest genre. It's an important time. I think a lot of people are looking towards us to bring about a different level of focus. I think our focus, obviously, over the last 6 months or so, was on a lot of what's happening in this country and world, and at every turn, it feels like you're seeing something more, like just when you thought,
yeah,
really, it won't go this way, or it won't get any worse. Sorry for starting off so heavy, man. I guess but
it's okay.
Yeah. I think that's the thing, though. I think that's what makes what we're doing and what I do, what you're doing, so important, man. I mean, people tune in to your show because they want to be not only just entertained, but I think they just want to feel a sense of community. You're a lot of these. I tune into a lot of your shows, and it's really cool to see some of the folks that have their own podcasts. They come and they celebrate yours, and vice versa. You're on various podcasts as well. And I think that's really cool. It's a thing that I think is super necessary at this point.
Yeah, you know, one of the things with this podcast specifically, you know, West Coast Davengers is its own thing, but this podcast, I'm trying to bring back that kind of authenticity in fandom, and where fandom kind of started. And I talk, and I think, you know, anybody who's read and been a part of comics in the 70s or 80s, you know, like we were, and into the early 90s, fanzines and fandom is really what has propped up the comic industry at its core. I mean, San Diego Comic-Con was a fandom convention to begin with, and look where it is now, which obviously is a completely different place, but all things kind of started with fandom. And music is a huge thing too. I mentioned, you know, uh, punk fanzines, mixtapes, all that kind of stuff is from fandom. And
Right.
I appreciate you saying that, because community is a huge, you know, we should keep it alive for comics.
Oh, absolutely, man. Absolutely. I mean, I see the shirt you have on, the
Mm-hmm.
kayfabe shirt. I mean, honestly, that that was kind of like the beginning, I think, of what you see today with
Mm-hmm.
so many different uh, communities, if you will, online, various podcasts, celebrating the culture.
Yeah, Ed and Jim really, really put people, you know, like gave people a place to go, especially, you know, at a time where each day was uncertain, like
Hmm.
in a way that we never experienced before, at least as a human race,
Right,
you
right,
know.
absolutely.
And you know, we don't have to go down the road of the toxic fandom, because I do talk about that a lot on this podcast. But
Mm,
fandom at its core, you know, people getting together, whether it's fan or like getting together in a studio, like, you know, like guys would have studios and get together and create comics next to each other, or the comic store community, or the book club kind of community. Like those are
mm.
all things that support the medium and support each other without being toxic.
Oh, absolutely. I think for me, um, we're all aware of the various forms of what you just spoke about, and I mean, for me, I keep it very simple. I'm a simple
Mm-hmm.
dude. I think that's the way to handle a lot of this stuff. I'm
Sure.
like, okay, if it's this negative vibe energy, I'm just not tuning in. It's simple as that. Like,
Easy.
you can have your platform and do whatever you want, but you're not going to get my energy. I've got too many other important things I consider to be important things to go about, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, I think that's why I'm able to um, navigate in these waters now, from a creative standpoint, just from a um, humanistic standpoint. Like,
Mm-hmm.
again, there's so much that we can focus on and harp on, and I would say 90% of it is BS.
Yeah.
Somehow, some way, it becomes like this. We won't even go down this road about representation and all this stuff, like in comics, and just how maybe we are going to go down that road. But
Yeah.
yeah, he said that's why I'm here. But for me, I'm like, I'm going to create what I'm going to create. You can either support it or be into it, or not. You don't
Mm.
have to create. I don't know. I don't understand, or maybe I do understand why there are so many folks that, well, not so many, but it feels like it sometimes when you're on
Yeah.
social media. They
The
create
loud minority.
people, yeah, the loud minority. They create these platforms off of these. I don't know what do you want to call it? Uh, these fake causes, whatever
Mm-hmm.
you. I don't know if it's a cause or whatever. It's kind of like, again, um, and I refuse to use certain terms right
Sure.
now because they will grab it and turn
Yes.
it into this thing. And again, as part of their whole spiel is, let me. Oh, so and so said
Yeah.
and
Yeah. And then
we're going to use the what do you want to call it? We're going to use the lightning rod terminology for whatever, and create a whole,
Mm-hmm.
platform for that stuff. And I'm like, go draw, go write,
Yeah.
go. What are you talking about, man? And again, there are legit things to um, have a platform about,
Mm-hmm.
um, but then there's a lot of this. It's just complete,
Nonsense.
yeah, complete nonsense. But we're here to talk about the good stuff.
Exactly. Because, like from what I've learned about you, like you're just like me. We love comics from like a young age, but like
Mhm.
the experience of picking a comic up for the first time, like, it stuck with me, and I assume it stuck with you because here we are,
Yep.
how many years later, and you're,
Look at that. Look at
yeah,
this.
yeah, you got your spinner rack right there. I've got my shelves here to represent just things that I love and some of your work up there. So tell me, you grew up in South Carolina, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
born and
Mm.
bred and still there.
Charleston area. Yeah.
Um, what was the first comic that you remember getting, like, or not even that you remember getting? What was the first comic that you remember reading and opening up and being like, "Oh shit, like I love this and I want to start doing this, or I want to start drawing like this."
Well, it wasn't comics directly at
Mm-hmm.
first. It was cartoons, Saturday morning cartoons. I do have some visual aid for you about that first comic because
Oh yeah.
I have that first comic. This is why I have the spinner rack here doing podcast interviews, because I can quickly turn around and grab, some stuff.
Yeah. I love
This
that.
section right here
Oh,
has
I
all
see
my,
it.
yeah.
I see it.
So this is the first comic that I ever got.
All right, so that's Avengers, what,
Let's get it in there.
two something?
Yeah, it's a 181.
181, okay.
John Byrne, believe it or not,
Which is not his main book and
which is
wasn't
not
really.
his main deal. It's funny how uh, you look back on like your childhood with adult eyes,
Mm-hmm.
and I hated this book when it first came. I didn't understand. I wanted Donald Duck,
Oh,
Mickey.
because you
I was
like
dumb.
cartoons.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
super young, so it wasn't really a thing where I understood artistry.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the more muscles a character had in a comic, the more scary it was. It was just scary
Yeah.
to me. So yeah, it wasn't my jam at first. So I chucked it to the side, and as I grew older, um, I went back to it, and oh, this is that stuff that I see on the Super Friends, even though this is not the Super Friends, but
But it's a
it's
type.
still, yeah, the archetypes are there. The muscled characters with capes and cows and stuff like that. So I started to get inspiration from the books then, and I started to draw a lot more of the heroes,
Mm-hmm.
um, the superheroes at the time, more than you know the Flintstones. So that's around that time. I was about 10.
Mm-hmm.
When uh, the the Super Friends and well, they were kind of on their way out. Transformers was like the thing started
Right.
to come around.
Towards the
So
beginning of the 80s.
yeah, and so anime, the early stages of anime was starting to take shape, and even as a youngster, I started to understand the difference between um, anime and Saturday morning cartoons,
Mm-hmm.
which the aesthetics just had. It was more detail, more grit, more. Of course, the stories were a little more.
It's a little more action than
Yeah, a
normal.
little more action, and so I started trying to find more and more of these superhero comics because that was the closest thing to um, that direction of art influence.
That makes sense. And one of the books that's still sitting on the rack right there is I wrote down one artist name because there is somebody specifically that I've had Joe Benitez, Todd McFarlane, like multiple people tell me it's this one artist that everybody was influenced by in your era, Michael Golden. And I see that Avengers Annual 10 right there. The first appearance of Rogue. It's still on the spinner rack over there.
And it's also right here.
Oh, and there's a copy there. And so here's
this the reader copy. That's the nice
copy.
Yeah.
So here's the thing that almost kind of blows my mind about Michael Golden, and maybe you can elaborate on it. He didn't have a big run. Like his longest runs was Micronauts for 12 issues, the Nom for 11 issues or 12, that book, the G.I. Joe yearbook #2. Like he and the more I see people who talk about him being an influence, the more I really see it. But yeah, what is it about Golden that really spoke to that generation?
I honestly think it's just that it kind of stood out from the other illustrated. John Byrne was kind of like, he kind of predates him, but he still was what we call, at least what I know it as, he was kind of a traditional. He was in the vein of a John Buscema, that school of artists. Michael Golden had that and then some. It was something about his work aesthetically that had the stuff that I saw in animation, especially in anime, the early stages of anime. Again, Gundam or
Akira.
Akira, absolutely. That level of detail and design. There was some things aesthetically that he was doing that that my adolescent brain couldn't truly process, but I knew it was something more than what I saw in these other titles. Even Walt Simonson was kind of in that sphere, but he was kind of coming from they were in the same school, but they were pushing different elements.
Yeah.
That came from that core element of like anime and animation. The action and the kineticness that Simonson produced, and the detail and the design, artistic design that Michael Golden was producing. All that stuff was coming from, the Far East, I guess.
And what fascinates me too about Golden is, I guess maybe there wasn't as many books. Well, obviously there wasn't as many books out on the shelves those days, but Micronauts, the Nom, like these aren't mainstream really when you think about Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, X-Men. George Perez was on a high profile book and Byrne was on so it's just kind of a fascinating thing. But he is, I mean, I can't imagine anybody could say differently, but he's got to be top 3 most influential artists in comic books of all time because of everybody that was influenced by him. So that's it's nice to hear from you, like what you took from it, because everybody's got something different. Everybody takes different from their influences. So switching gears in that same vein, we grow up around our parents and around what they listen to musically. What was the first kind of album that you gravitated towards, or first artist or song that was not something that, was grandfathered in via family, like something that maybe you heard at school with your friends or whatever?
Well, it definitely was hip hop. When I was really, really young, it was Run DMC.
Yeah.
But shortly, a few years after, I was around 10 or 11, Public Enemy came out, and That scared the living daylights out of me because it was just loud and abrasive, and kind of like I would imagine punk rock had has a similar influence
Mm-hmm.
on folks coming up around that time. But the lyrics, started listening to the lyrics, and it sounded like they were uh, not angry, but they were um, resolute.
Yeah. And
He has a very
energized.
resolute, yeah, very resolute voice. Obviously his cadence kind of has a MLK
Mm-hmm.
cadence to it. So I started connecting some of those dots, and my 10, 11-year-old brain was exploding, and I got emotional, and I wanted to, like, I don't know, I wanted to just find out more about this stuff, but I was afraid to, because it was if I might see something that might destroy me. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but I kept coming back to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and by the time I was 13, it was a wrap. It was like everything is rap, hip hop. Obviously, um, I was all in, um, no turning back. And yeah, it was. I look back at those times, and it's interesting because how I discovered the music in certain groups and artists,
Mm-hmm.
the way that I reacted to those artists in the different styles of hip hop was similar to how I reacted to comics when I
Yeah.
first discovered, especially the comics like the Michael Goldens. My young brain couldn't take this information. It scared me, but it also it had me enamored. I wanted to. I'm like, should I look at that again? I don't know. It's too much, but I'm not gonna throw it away. I'm just gonna put it to the side, and I keep looking at it every once in a while and pick it up again, and all of a sudden my brain is like accepting it. Um, so very similar interactions.
You just kind of triggered for me, kind of feeling like, Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction was the first
Mm,
thing that I was like, it felt the same way. It's like, oh, should I, shouldn't I? Like, should I keep going? Like, I don't know a lot of these words and I probably shouldn't,
right, right.
but then I feel like the first time I looked at Todd's work, I felt the
Mm,
same way,
yeah.
like seeing McFarlane for the first time, it felt the same way. And then like forward, like to match what you were feeling about Public
Mm,
Enemy is what I felt about Rage Against the Machine the first time I
mm,
heard
yeah,
Freedom. And I'm like, Zach was angry, but it was like very focused
yeah.
on the cause. And then when I found out, also, I got to say, when I found out that Public Enemy was from Long Island, where I grew up, I was like, oh shit, like
Yeah,
these dudes are from like 20 minutes away from where I grew up. And
right.
it's, you start to identify, I think, a lot of characteristics in yourself when you start to hear things that are in the public
Hmm.
sound like how you kind of feel, or
Yep,
look like how you feel,
right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that was the thing that for me, I was just you start to, especially around 13, you're
Mm-hmm.
starting to discover things. Who are you? Where you coming? Where are you? Who do you who who are you? Where do
Yeah.
you want to go? And before you go anywhere, you kind of need to know where you came from in a lot of ways. Um, that's what a lot of that did for me, and I started to implement that in how I draw. What influenced me
Mm-hmm.
artistically? A lot of it came from the music, that I listened to. I would imagine most artists, especially in the comic industry,
Yeah.
um, their direction artistically um, kind of is permeated from things that influence them,
Right.
as far as music and different cultures.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I feel bad for people that aren't influenced by those things because they miss out on a lot in their life. I mean, I try to skew away from friendships, people that are like, I don't like music. Like, okay,
Oh
well,
gosh,
yeah, like, or, I don't really watch too many movies,
I
like,
don't like breathing. I don't like eating.
yeah, like art is the only thing that we have, whether it's movies, music, comics, literature, paintings, it's the only thing I feel like that we have to kind of understand other people.
Right.
Like anybody can, say who they are, but if you look at what they like and the things that they consume, the things that they put out in the world in that way, you kind of understand who they are. And
Hmm.
that human experience is the only thing we have.
And this might be a question that you were going to throw out there, maybe not, but I think that's the reason why I think AI is not going to necessarily be what we think is going to be. Some people are assuming, oh my God, this is the end of whatever. I'm
Yeah.
like, I think the human experience is going to prevail when it's all said and done. It's not just the end all be all when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to this stuff, because there's just something that's kind of an intangible element to creativity from a human, an actual human creating, whether it be music or visuals or
Mm-hmm.
what have you, and the experience of it is from a human element. I think is going to be the thing that really um, prevails when it's all said and done.
Yeah. You can't replace, I mean, they want to
Yeah,
try, but you can't replace humans.
right. It'll be here. It's
Yeah.
here now, right? It's always. T- People say, "Oh my God, AI." I'm like, dude, you realize AI has been around since, you know?
It's been around a while in
Yeah,
different forms. I mean, CGI is one of the
yeah,
ways that I think it kind of started.
yeah.
You know, I actually I was listening to some podcast and they were talking about how, like, forget who it was. They were talking about how you can create music with AI, and they named a website, and I went on it and I tried to create a West Coast Davengers theme, and trying to get AI to understand how to pronounce Davengers. Oh yeah, good luck. It's
Right.
Davengers, it's Davengers,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm just like, well, because I made the word up. So
Right, right,
why would a computer know how to pronounce
right,
it?
right. I think that's the thing too. I also teach at a college here in South Carolina, Benedict College.
Mm-hmm. Your
It's
alma mater.
historical. Say it again.
It's your alma mater, right?
Yeah, yeah, man. And it's a historical Black institution, which is uh, probably more important now than ever, to
Yeah.
be honest with you. But my students, we played this game the other week, where I just put up a bunch of images, and I asked them, "Can you tell what's AI versus that came from someone?"
Mm-hmm.
Uh, as far as like a actual person creating it
Yeah.
from scratch. And they, I would say, out of about 20, close to 20 images, they got almost all of them right. They could tell
Wow.
what was AI versus, and I'm like, well, why can you tell the AI, what's AI and what's, made by, actual human creativity? You can argue about human creativity from that side, whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
start to scratch, someone took a pen to paper or a pen to tablet and drew this thing or illustrated this thing. And they said there's something about it, there's a human element in the way that they're doing certain things,
Mm-hmm.
like, whatever, the eyes or whatever. It felt like this AI stuff was just way too, like, it's done, but it's done almost too well. And I think
Yes.
there's a level of imperfection in creativity that makes it even more special. You know,
Um. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, you're good. You're good.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like everybody, and it's hard for me not to bring it back to stuff that Todd McFarlane says, but he says, style is just your mistakes, like
Right.
and so to see something that has no real style or has no real errors,
Hmm.
AI wants to make things perfect, and well, I'm sorry, computer, there is nothing in life that's perfect.
Right.
Absolutely nothing, except maybe
Right.
the existence of sharks. I don't know.
Right.
You know,
Right.
um, you
But
know, yeah,
no, I was going to say, and what's funny is the things that are mistakes by AI, they look really weird. Like,
yeah,
and it's not like human error. It's literally, there's no way anything should look like that. That's,
yeah, yeah,
that's just incorrect altogether. Um, so that part, it's like, yeah. So that's why I take, a good deal of comfort in knowing that we're going to be, okay. And those that don't listen to music or not into it or movies or whatever, they're the ones that are really upset and angry about everything.
yes, they don't.
If you really think about it, you know.
Yeah, man, I don't understand people that don't enjoy stuff like that. But hey, that's not me. That's not anybody I associate with.
Mhm.
And just on AI, I mean, I've seen some stuff where like people are like, oh, I created this comic cover. I'm like, oh, why does this character have 12 fingers then? Like, but and I don't have kids, and I know you do. I think the reason why kids are able to spot that versus people that maybe our age or older,
Mhm.
is because they grew up knowing that a lot of this stuff was AI, and they didn't have like, maybe the filter works the other way versus like, like we grew up without the internet, so we
Mhm.
know how to communicate with people. Well, they grew up with the internet, so they can identify things that aren't real and are, maybe, hopefully,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah. I mean, they're not out to lunch like a lot of people think.
Yeah.
Like a lot of folks think. They're in tune, man. I think that's another reason why I teach, because I like being tuned in to
Hmm.
where things are headed.
Yeah.
Because these are you know, the next podcasters, the next, comic illustrators or writers or film producers or whatever you want, musicians.
Yeah.
These are the next ones, man. And where are things going to be? You get a nice pulse by interaction, by the
Hmm.
interaction with those folks.
So speaking of teaching, I had Sean Crystal on last week, and he,
Mm,
set up the design, the art and design school at SCAD, or I know I'm saying the wrong name of the school. My mom was a teacher. My closest
mhm.
friend is a teacher. Is it something that was always something you wanted to explore doing and do as you were, when you were younger?
No, and what it, I thought. I mean, what's funny? This adage of those who can't teach. I
Teach,
don't know if
yeah.
you ever heard that before. That thing is a bunch of
BS. Yeah,
crap.
it's
To be
bullshit.
honest with
Yeah.
you, man. I mean, I think maybe at one point in time that might be it, but then actually I take that back. I think being in the space that I'm in now, and what I mean is, um, where I'm at in my life
Hmm.
and my outlook. I'm like those who teach, or that's a superpower. If you're able to teach and do this thing, or if you're just teaching in general,
Yeah.
not
It is a superpower.
it's like I can go into these class settings. I remember my first class. I thought, oh wow, I can go and I can teach what I do, my drawing.
Hmm.
And there's a reason why someone like, and I'm not saying I'm this person, but I'm just using the example. There's a reason why someone like Michael Jordan doesn't coach basketball, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Um, because there's something that he does that he just can't really teach. You can teach how to dribble, you can teach how to shoot a free throw, but what he does, that's what he does, right? And I think someone like that wouldn't really be good at teaching basketball, because what he does, the way
Hmm.
that he does it, is
Yeah.
not meant for everybody to do it like that,
No, he's a
right?
unicorn.
As a unicorn. Whereas someone like I don't know if you're into sports or basketball or anything like that, but maybe someone like JJ Redick,
Mm-hmm.
who coaches the Lakers now. The reason why he's able to do that was or is because and I think it's tremendous that you can come in and you can get a bunch of grown folks to follow your directions, do what you say or whatever. That's a
It's tough.
tremendous power.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of patience, and it also takes a lot of humility. You
Yeah.
have to be okay with someone saying to you, "You don't know what you're talking about," or "You don't know what you're doing," or "You don't." That might not be true. That's just their pride or whatever. But you have to be in a space to where you don't react to those kind of things. And I think anyone that teaches is just. So I went into I went into my first going back to my first experience doing that stuff, man, and I had it all wrong. I thought, oh well, surely they knew, I can get them to be excited because of what I do, and they were not impressed. They didn't really care, maybe one or two,
Mm-hmm.
but the majority just wasn't really. They were like, is it over yet? Is the class? I'm like, oh man. I mean, I felt the first day I felt defeated. To be honest with you, I'm like,
Yeah.
this is not going to work. And and it took time. It took time to meet them where they were, and it also took time to understood to understand what I do and how to convey it to them. Like that is not just something you just pop out of nowhere. You have to be able to break it down to where if someone doesn't know how to draw a straight line, how do you teach them how to draw a straight line? No, do it like this. What does that mean? I don't know
Yeah.
what that means. Do it like this. You can do it, but I don't know what that means. So you have to be, like I said, this teaching in general, man, is just such a tremendous thing, man. And, I take pride in it, to be honest with you. Not necessarily the thing I wanted to do, but part of the reason why I did it was because the school reached out to me and asked, and I fought it for a while. And my wife was pregnant, and with our first kid, and
Yeah.
the comic thing wasn't necessarily popping off the way it is now, or whatever. But I had to make a decision, and honestly, when I did it, I thought, oh, I'll do this for a year or two, and I'm out. 10 years later, 12 years later,
Still there.
still there, man.
Well,
But I love it though. I love it.
that's
That's
uh
the only reason I'm still there, man. Because is great.
that's really nice to hear. I think, obviously, like I said, my mom was a teacher for 40, years, and my closest friend, and he had that kind of same experience that you were talking about. Is I remember just talking to him, his first couple years teaching, and he was so defeated, but he figured out his way in. I think one thing that you didn't say that I think you'll agree on, teaching takes a great bit of empathy. You were
Yeah.
saying teaching somebody to draw a straight line that can't, the big part of it, the thing that always frustrated me with my teachers and people that try and teach is that if I don't know how to do it, like, don't make me feel like I'm
Right.
dumb for not
Right.
knowing how to do it. Like,
Right.
so I appreciate you saying that. And I think, not only are teachers superheroes, but, you know, let's just face the fact they should be let's say the top 5% earners in the world. And they're
Well,
not.
that's
That's different. Right. That's a different
yeah,
story.
that's a whole nother rabbit hole.
Podcast. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
the podcast where I have you, Sean Crystal on, and Daniel Warren Johnson, who is a former teacher. And
Oh yeah, yeah,
we just talk about teachers, in general. But,
yeah.
I always have to be vocal about that because I think, we should be screaming it from the rooftops that educators are superheroes.
Well, yeah, like I said, it's a rabbit hole. But I'll say this, man. There's a reason why they're fighting against it, and it's a lot of what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Their teachers are extremely powerful if you really understand what they're doing, and appreciate, and then you appreciate that. You, that will be a you know a home run. Just knowing knowing those two basic fundamentals
Yeah.
It's like everything we just talked about, but those two basics,
Yeah.
you got something. They would be in the upper echelon in terms of our society.
Yeah. Yeah.
Other countries do it, but
Yeah, yeah, but like you said, that's a whole other rabbit hole. But I just, I just want to say to all the people listening, any of my educator friends, like, you always have an ally right here, both of us.
mm-hmm.
you
Yep.
know. I want to ask you about. I'm trying to figure out a little history about you because I know you don't really want to talk about a certain comic that was your first comic, but I'm trying to figure out
Oh,
which
which one is that?
well, was it Black Arrow or was it the Star Wars tales?
Gee whiz, man! You're like there's a friend of mine. This is a total sidebar. There's a friend of mine that does he's on Sirius XM and he does interviews for like different celebrities,
Mm.
music artists and movie people, and he will ask questions about when they were 8 years old. Did you really steal the candy from your aunt? How did you know that? I feel that way right now. You said Black Arrow. Oh my God, Black Arrow. That
Yeah.
is the
Well,
very first thing that I ever did, ever.
so
Okay.
how does that come into how does it? Because I know it was like Wizard World Chicago you went to with
Yeah.
some friends. Look, if I'm not doing my research, I'm not
Research,
having
man.
fun.
Oh my God, yeah. So Wizard World. I don't know if you've ever been to any of those.
Yeah, I think I was at some of the early ones on the East Coast.
Okay, so the Wizard World Chicago, which was the preeminent con.
Mm-hmm.
This is right around the time where this is before San Diego became a thing that it
Right.
is now, and there was no New York or anything like that.
Yeah, because there was a break in the years
Mhm.
that New York Comic Con didn't exist.
Didn't exist, and so Wizard World was the place to be. This is where all the big companies go. So we took a trip up to Chicago to go to Wizard World, and truth be told, that show kind of that convention, that era, I
Mm-hmm.
think really produced a lot of, preeminent, artists that you see and writers you see today. That's where I first met Scotty Young. That's where
Oh
I
wow.
first met. We used to hang out a lot, because we all were trying to figure it out, trying to break in.
Yeah.
Um, Ryan Otley, actually, even before him, um,
Corey Walker.
Corey Walker.
Mm-hmm.
He was there. Um, oh man, it was just so many. There was so many of us trying to figure it out, man. And it was just it was a time where the hustle. When you heard of that phrase, the hustle is real.
Oh yeah.
Man, it was like a frenzy, and everyone was trying to start a publishing company, and this brother, I forgot his name. You probably know it. The
Edward
publisher.
Sims. Edward Sims.
See, of course you know it. Oh my gosh, man! Just don't pull up any images, man.
I won't. I won't. I promise I have no images, but I
Yeah,
will find that. I will find that book one day.
oh my gosh, I think I might have one in the attic, and maybe the termites already got it. I don't know, but long story short, he was he had a small booth, and we're walking around trying to get portfolio reviews, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd never forget the writer Jim Kruger told me the
Mm.
year before, because he was at Marvel. He was like an editor at Marvel for a short stint, and I was at the Marvel booth, praying that someone would give me a shot. And again, we're still young. I mean, I'm my sophomore year in college, I think,
Okay.
and so he said to go and show your work to smaller publishers.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a good way to get your foot in the door. They're more than likely going to hire you before the bigger companies. And, that still kind of rings true to some
Sure.
degree today. They're not just going to, unless you're some crazy phenom. But back then it was weird too, because everyone we hear of these stories in the wild about some kid that showed up at the con and blew everyone away and
Yeah.
got a job, on the spot, and it was all lies, man. But somehow you heard those rumors, and we were thinking that we were, the next, phenom.
Yeah.
And this brother, Edward Sims, I showed him my work, and I was just showing him my work. I wasn't even thinking about trying. I'm like, I'll show it because
Yeah.
he said, hey, would you be interested in doing a comic series? And I'm like, really? And he told me what it was about, the Black Arrow, and I said okay. I said okay, and he paid. He paid. That was my first paying work as well. So it was a great experience to get published, get paid, to get a schedule. To start learning how to do a schedule. It was a great experience. For my first time out. So yeah, man, you got me thinking.
Well, I mean, everybody has a different story of how it happened, right? And like, I mean, I know a lot of friends that listen to this that are, trying to break in or just trying to create comics and get people in front of them. And I think, hearing about everybody's hard work, like you said, there is no, not everybody, nobody had a Stan Lee story where, their family owned this thing and then he gets
Right.
thrust into it. But even Stan Lee had to work his ass off. I mean, no, you don't get to be that kind of mouthpiece and promoter by just being,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and so it's nice to hear, like you hear about people that send in, all these letters and all these sample stuff and they get rejected and rejected. And, you found
Yeah.
your first work with somebody at a con. Like,
Yeah.
it's a hopeful story. I mean, and it's still happening today.
Yeah.
So how early was the Star Wars Tales? It was a couple years after that, right?
Yeah, it wasn't too much after that. Again, you probably know better than I do. You got all these notes. Actually, it was like you are Wikipedia. Are you the reason why my Wikipedia has
Dude, I looked at your
weird,
Wikipedia. It's like I
has some
felt
weird
like
stuff in there, man?
somebody wrote it and then just kind of decided to like slack off at the end.
Oh well, that's 99% of these things, I guess.
Yeah,
Maybe.
that's the internet in general, actually.
Yeah, yeah. I went to that thing one time and I said I should change this stuff and make it, accurate. And I'm like,
Yeah.
whatever, man. Like I said, there's certain things I'm just not going to put a lot of energy into, and I
Sure.
might one day I'll get an assistant to
There you
do it.
go. There you go. I mean,
But
that's why podcasts like this exist, for everybody
that's
to
right.
learn.
That's right. Yeah, Star Wars Tales was maybe a year after
Hmm.
that or so, a year and a half. Like there was these weird. Like I was still in college trying to graduate and and I got that I will never forget. I was pledging my fraternity, working on that Black Arrow book. That was that was the worst experience I've ever had. Not because of the work itself, but everything. It
But
was
yeah,
all
the
that in
pressures of
school.
everything.
Yeah, I mean, all that stuff was just a lot of just. And my now wife, girlfriend at the time, she was upset with me because I didn't spend a lot of time with her, and
Mm.
I couldn't. A lot of it I couldn't really go into the details about. One, she definitely didn't understand the comic thing.
Right, and the fraternity's a fraternity.
Yeah, fraternity thing was kind of like that's for us and whatever. But yeah, so you're bringing back some memories, man. A little trauma as well.
Oh,
So,
well,
I'm joking.
that's life in general.
Life in general. Yeah, yeah.
And then so with your path to comics, hold on one second. Let me fix this stupid. There we go. With your path to comics, you also work in animation. So do those two things kind of like, are you trying to break into both at once, or does, the comics come and then you look over here for the animation? You're like, oh, I want to kind of get into that because you worked on Boondocks, Avengers, and then obviously, your designing role in Spider-Verse.
Yeah, man. Honestly, the Boondocks era was when comics weren't really
Yeah.
paying the bills. And just being transparent, I wasn't necessarily doing work that was getting me opportunities in comics at the time. It was that time. That time was kind of a weird time.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of everyone that's anyone right now wasn't doing comics
No.
then.
Yeah, it was a tough time in
Yeah,
comics.
you needed to have a what they call the house style for Marvel and DC. If you didn't draw like a Jim Lee or a Brian Hitch,
Mm-hmm.
tremendous, phenomenal artists, but if you didn't have that kind of aesthetic, you weren't really getting a lot of opportunities. Oh, we got this really cool animated, Batman strikes, or this cool
Mm-hmm.
what's the word? What's the one? The Justice League Unlimited
Unlimited,
baseball
yeah.
cartoon. I would do a lot of that stuff, and once that stuff kind of fell off, I was so far in that direction artistically. This super clean, animated looking cartoony, if you want to call it that, because that was always the description. Oh, your stuff is very cartoony.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, there were a dozen other artists that are pretty prominent today that had that same issue. And then for me, I didn't stick around like those guys. They kind of stuck around, and they finally got their footing in the industry, and they kind of took off from there. I was already out. Now I went over towards the animation side of things, and the Boondocks was a nice stint. Did video game stuff
Right.
for a while, concept design. It was so interesting because the style that I was doing around that time, or that approach, was totally uh, wasn't something that people appreciated in the comic industry. But it was revered in animation and games and what have you.
Huh.
I just remember going to a comic convention, San Diego Comic Con, my first year
Uh-huh.
at San Diego Comic Con, and several animation studios and a couple of video game companies came over to my table. I was in Artist Alley at that time.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, "Stuff is amazing. Can we, exchange information?" And I'm like, "Well, dog, if this is what it's like to, they seem to appreciate what I'm doing here." And again, I'm not saying that stuff I was doing was, I was knocking it out of the park or whatever,
Right.
but I still wanted opportunities, and they were the ones that were willing to give them. So that's where I went.
So is that the early 2000s or?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I
So
mean,
2003, 4, 5. I mean, I did kind of like I don't know if I have it. I'll find it in a second.
mm-hmm.
But I have a sketchbook that remember those little mini sketchbooks that became a thing.
Yeah.
Everyone have their little sketchbook. I printed out this sketchbook that had a lot of my design work in it, or the stuff that I would do for fun, like
Yeah.
designing Marvel characters or DC characters. And I printed these things. They were ash can size, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and that thing got me more work because I printed 200 of them.
Yeah.
San Diego, sell that so you make money from that. But then some art director, it gets into some art director's hands, and now I got a contract designing.
Wow.
I did some design work, early design work of Star Wars, the Gendy Tartakovsky, is that his name?
Oh yeah, yeah. The Russian director. I guess he's Russian. Is he Russian?
But yeah, he did Samurai Jack and Dexter and Powerpuff. So he did his version of Star Wars. I did some early designs based on his concept,
and
that was the greatest day of my life.
Yeah,
because
working
with
Star Wars.
Yeah, and that's what got me the
tales,
the Star Wars tales. So yeah, there was or was it the other way around? It might have been the other way around, but it was the other way around. But that I stayed there for a while.
That's fascinating. Like I think a lot of people look back, even now they'll start to look back and realize how just across the board in not just comics and movies and all that, but like the early 2000s was a very creative part of our history, because I think the late 90s wasn't. And we can talk in comic terms when, Quesada and Palmiotti come in and, turn the ship of Marvel around and do Marvel Knights. And then you get Mark Miller, you get Garth Ennis, you get, all this great stuff that leads to literally the creation of the shaping of the MCU and, some great books too, like great books.
Yep.
And I feel like we need that again, soon. Like we need a nice little, kick of creativity. But yeah, your work in animation, and then and fast forwarding a little bit. Obviously your relationship with music. You've worked with artists. You've worked with Wu-Tang. You've worked with. You did a Rock the Bells print. Did I see right that you did a Bruce Springsteen print, or am I out there and that's a complete error?
You can blame that on Wikipedia. That's why I need to go back in there and change. No, well, no,
no. Okay,
just no.
There's a website that had it as your print, but I didn't think it was your art, so I needed to ask just to make sure.
Yeah.
But you and was it Axel Alonso kind of concept with the hip hop variant covers, right?
Yeah. Real quick, he reached out. We were corresponding for a while, and once I started to get kind of like interest in my work again back in the comics, he was one of the first to show that interest, and we had the connection of music is our bonding, if you will, and he kept hinting around to me that he has something that would be perfect for me, but he can't talk about it yet. And I'm like, okay, well, I got to pay bills, so I can't sit here and wait for you to tell me this thing. I got to move on. And so shortly after, he came back and said, hey, remember that thing? And it was the hip hop variant thing. And he told the story about what he was looking to do. And he wanted me to come in and to help create a few covers, but also kind of help navigate who would be good for this, like curate this thing, who are some artists that would have the aesthetic. And I didn't really help him with every artist for every cover. It was more of just kind of getting things jump started. Who are some good artists to kick this thing off and go from there? So I gave him a list of artists that I thought would be perfect for this. Mike Del Mundo was probably number one on that list. And it kind of kept going from there. This artist, Juan Doe. And this is at the time when Juan was just doing these crazy covers for, I think he was doing Fantastic Four covers.
Okay.
His stuff is crazy. So, we got those guys in there, and it just took off, man. It just became a overnight success, if you will.
It really was. I mean, I wasn't buying too many weekly books at the time, but I remember seeing them and like having to resist buying, the LL Cool J homage and the albums that I grew up, your De La cover and there was at least one Tribe, maybe two Tribe, it's interesting because I think that's the first time. I mean, that mixed with, Ed's book is kind of like the first time, the comic collecting and buying and reading audience realizes how intertwined hip hop and comics are. I guess obviously MF Doom being the pinnacle of that, because literally his entire persona is built on the homage to Dr. Doom. But I'm glad that it happened because like music, hip hop, comics, and then you could throw wrestling in. Three things that involve alter egos, that involve boisterous personalities. And I just love that you were, you picked some great stuff. You did some amazing stuff with those hip hop variants, and you and Axel.
Yeah, well, definitely, Axel, he definitely showed, to your point, that comics can cross pollinate to these other fandoms, and it's the same energy in terms of the fandom, and it was a perfect storm. Like, if you can get the fandom of hip hop and the fandom of comics and put that together, we did a big signing at New York Comic Con. First issues of it, it had to have been 200, close to 300 people in that line.
Wow.
Just for 1 hour, and we got pretty much everyone that did a cover. They were there signing that day. It was about a dozen of us, maybe more, on that stage. Ed was up there. Ed was up there with us, man. And I got the picture. I'll forward it to you.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
One of the coolest pictures. Axel did a selfie with all of us behind him. It looked like a rap cover. Is what it looked like, a rap album. It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool.
So one of the other things that I found out very recently that you worked on, because I didn't even know it existed, because I don't drink anymore, but you did a comic in tandem with, was it Ron Wimberly and Emma Rios for Ardbeg whiskey?
Yeah.
So, because I know Trad Moore did one, and I heard that those bottles are $20,000 or something like that.
I didn't know that. I did not know that, but I definitely, it was, again, you work in this comic industry, and then you go outside of the comic industry and you do animation or concept work for video, and then something even, off the beaten path like that. And you're like, why am I doing funny books again? Right. Oh, I know why. I just like drawing them, and so there is a sickness there. We tend to, anyway. But yeah, that was a great experience, man. Ron Wimberly, Emma Rios, two tremendous talents, and it's kind of cool. I never met Emma before, but I was a fan of her work when she first came out doing Pretty Deadly. I'm like, who's this Emma Rios? I need more of this. And
fantastic.
Cool. Yeah, she's cool. She's real cool.
Yeah, and Ron's no slouch himself.
No, I mean, he actually art directed the whole thing. He put together the whole thing, and it was cool seeing his process and how he was able to curate the whole thing.
Right. Well, I'm gonna try and get my hands on one of those books.
I got you.
All right, I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
So there's two big things to talk about. You've got your creator owned, at this point, you've won awards for it, and it's this amazing thing in Bitterroot. And then last year you had arguably the most popular comic book that came out in the Doom one shot. So let's go into Doom first, because that's, contained to where it was. First off, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Marvel's, they don't do things completely right, but that literally is an impossible to find book. They only put it into 2 printings, but luckily for all of us, we've got the Treasury coming out in a couple weeks. But let's hear your like the seed for this. I mean, I know John Hickman, who's a friend of yours, he kind of worked with the story with you, but largely this is this comic book is all you for the most part.
Yeah. I mean, kind of to your point, I had this idea. What I'm doing was the last defense for the universe, and he has to stop some force from basically ending all things. And what better force than Galactus? Obviously, because of the history that they have. And I just wanted to draw that cool helmet.
Yeah.
I wanted to play around with the aesthetic, and so we just started to. I started to plot and lay out the different story points that I wanted to try to implement in this story, and reached out to Jonathan, and he at first he said, dude, you got everything there, man. What do you need me for? I'm like, I need your name, man. That's what I need. I said, I need your name on this thing, man. And he got a kick out of that. But no, he was great with helping me with the dialogue and
Mm-hmm.
kind of getting the actual voices behind uh, Doom and Valeria. Valeria probably more so because I wasn't as familiar with her. How she got to be in the story was we needed some kind of anchor piece or anchor as far as like a character or a moment, if you will, that would help give. Doom is already. Let's just be honest. He's a villain, but he's the most beloved villain in
definitely
all of comicdom. I don't know of any other villain.
There's nobody that beats him.
You just love to see him show up in Rec Shop. Thanos don't have that kind of clout. The Joker doesn't have that kind of clout.
Venom doesn't have that. It's not a villain anymore.
It's like all these villains that are like super the luminaries, but they don't have what he has. So, I knew that he was definitely because of that. That's one of the characters that I absolutely love. People always ask me, what character would you love to draw? And I always would mention Doom.
Mm-hmm.
And they're kind of like, oh, really? Not Spider-Man. I'm like, no, I want to do Dr. Doom for those very reasons. His hubris, his
flaws,
his wants. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, his unrelenting belief in his beliefs, his convictions. You're like, man, if there's anyone that might be able to pull off saving the universe, he might be the one. Doctor Strange can do some stuff here or there, some timey-wimey stuff, and Reed, of course, can do his thing, but you kind of want to see someone like Doom to pull this off.
Well, like you said, the hubris.
The hubris is what makes it even more interesting because of that. So yeah, that was, long story short, I had the idea. I put together the plot, pitched it to Marvel. I thought it was kind of dead in the water, and I got an email out of the blue from Tom Brevoort,
mm-hmm.
and he said, I'm putting Will Moss on this. He will be reaching out to you shortly. I'm like, oh, okay. I guess this is good. And this is before Hickman was involved.
Mm-hmm.
But once I got with Will Moss, and he's such a tremendous editor, man. We came up with a great way to tie everything together, and obviously, probably one of your questions is the whole MF Doom reference. That kind of just that, perhaps, maybe. Yeah. But that was definitely. I knew that I wanted to do something to kind of implement that in the story.
Yeah.
I just didn't know it would,
it would resonate and be.
It would go viral the way that it did, and here we are, man. Here we are, treasuries, and I don't know how many different variants there are out there at this point. I mean, there's, oh my God, man, whatnot.
There's a lot.
Yeah,
but there's only one real cover.
There's only one real cover. And but yeah, I mean, all kinds of great opportunities came from that, man. And so I'm excited. And there, I'll say this here. You heard it here first. Stay tuned.
Well, I'll say this. First of all, congrats also, with Felix, and you sold the entire issue, and that's I'm always happy to hear when a creator can just be like, oh yeah, the whole issue's, Felix does a great job with that, and you do a great job with your art. So, but a couple things about it. First off, it's awesome to watch you play in Kirby Sandbox, because when you think, Galactus and Doom, that's Kirby Sandbox.
Yeah.
And you also worked in getting, almost every character in the Marvel universe in some of those splash pages.
Yeah.
Um, the quiet moments of that book actually stuck out to me more than anything. Like the story, the art wise, obviously the splash pages are amazing. I'll say this, and I find somebody that wants to refute this, and even if you do, I'm going to disagree with you. You have some of the most exciting splash pages since Kirby. Like he was a master of a splash, and like looking at this book and Bitterroot, there's some energy in there that's unparalleled. But the quiet moments in the story really stuck out to me because how often do we get such a bombast, the characters and the actual plot, but get really quiet moments in a book?
Oh, yeah. I mean, truth be told, they wanted to turn this into a mini series once they saw kind of things coming together. And I'm like, I don't know if you're going to get kind of what, to your point, you're going to get those beats to move the way that this right here was the perfect size for it. Treat it like an annual, like those old school annuals or giant size,
like all those good Art Adams annuals.
Yeah, those Art Adams annuals. And honestly, I was kind of like, I pulled some of those books out just to kind of look at what they were doing and why those books are so special. What made it, obviously the art, but to your point, the story as well is memorable. You remember the X-Men annuals from Art Adams more than you remember a lot of the actual series. You might remember different eras, but you remember the actual story that he produced. And that's kind of what I was channeling in a lot of ways.
Well, you channeled it well, and I will say on the art, looking at Bitterroot and looking at Doom, almost feel like maybe you were going towards a manga style for Doom more than you generally do with, like you already said, like animated but there was definitely manga. And did you do any of the trips with Felix to Japan?
No, sadly, because I was drawing Doom when he was in Japan.
Yeah,
or drawing Bitterroot when he was in Japan. But the plan is to go. Hopefully this year.
I will see you there.
All right, let's go, man. I might stay over there, based on where things are going.
Oh my God! I mean, I'm doing.
Sorry, I shouldn't have went there, but yeah.
I say it enough on this channel, and on both channels, to tell you the truth. Like I don't shy away from it, but but it was really nice to see like how. I had heard about it. I'm like, I'm going to buy this book because like I said, I don't do a ton of weeklies. I try to, read in hardcovers and stuff, but, I don't know if Marvel really understood how well it was received. Not that it just sold out, but like we're starting to get to the point where people are talking about these books, the ones that they like a lot more. And Doom was on the lips of every single person until the end of the year, and it's going to be back on people's, in people's mouths and on people's lips and in people's hands when the Treasury comes out in a couple weeks.
And to your point earlier about the original art being sold, I really pushed hard for there to be a section that shows the actual art
in the Treasury.
So it's going to be actual raw
Sweet.
scans. Shouts to Felix for pulling that off as far as getting the raw scans to Marvel. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, because I figured the least we can do is give people that.
Yeah, and in that format. I mean, I will give kudos to Marvel for bringing back that format. I wish they would follow kind of what Ed did with Grand Design and with Hip Hop Family Tree and do it on uncoated stock, but you can't have everything.
You can't have everything. Well, I fought for that too. So look, I'm saying all this stuff. Like I hadn't even seen what it looks like yet. Like physically, I requested that stuff, and they said that everything is good to go in terms of
Awesome.
So it won't be shiny paper. I know that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know what stock, but it won't be that shiny paper because I was gonna lose my mind if you show me those raw scan black and whites on.
Yeah, it wouldn't do justice to it.
Yeah, it would do justice.
It's something that I think if consumers push back to as well as creators, you might see more care by the big two put into the craft of printing instead of just pumping out whatever they pump out. But
Yeah.
so let's talk about the opus. Bitterroot. It's you and David Walker and oh my God, Brown.
Chuck Brown.
Chuck. I couldn't remember his first name.
Yeah, yeah.
So this book, so layered. There's so much to talk about, but you're a co-creator, and from what I understand, it was a concept that the two of you kind of came together with, or the three of you, I should say.
Yeah. So long story short, me and David we were ending our run of Power Man Iron Fist.
Mm-hmm.
We had some ideas that we wanted to implement into the Power Man Iron Fist story arc. Marvel wasn't really wanting to go in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of pivot. Well, before we pivoted, I had conversations with me and Chuck Brown. We had an idea, or at least a germ of an idea, about doing a book about a family during the Harlem Renaissance. They hunt monsters, and I thought it was a cool idea because I'd never really seen a story, graphic novel, depicted in that era. The Harlem Renaissance is kind of oddly enough, it's an untapped time period. You got Victorian era, you got all these different eras that's always being depicted, but that time. And I'm like, yeah, let's see what we can do with it. And we were slowly putting that idea together.
Mm-hmm.
And again, when we were ending Power Man Iron Fist, David had wanted to do something with Luke Cage where you see his family back during the Harlem Renaissance. And I'm like, whoa, well, dude, me and Chuck, we got this idea about that same time period. Why don't we kind of come together and do this thing ourselves?
Yeah.
See if we can, create something cool. And I think we did something okay. I think
you could say that.
I think we did all right, man.
Obviously not to beat a dead horse, but going into that, back to education and the Harlem Renaissance. Like, I'm a New Yorker. I mean, granted, I didn't grow up in New York City, but my parents didn't. I don't know anything about the Harlem Renaissance. I didn't learn about it as a New Yorker. I mean, I'm assuming the Eddie Murphy movie Harlem Nights, that's when it takes place.
Yep.
I mean, I saw it way back when.
Right.
But, it kind of goes into and once again, not a rabbit hole we need to go down to, but it touches on, Bitterroot touches on parts of history and things are referenced, Juneteenth and all the stuff that happened surrounding that, which, it's crazy to think that audiences and people didn't know about that until the Watchmen TV show kind of brought that to the forefront 4 years ago. And it's the first time in my adult life that I learned something about American history that is so big and so huge.
Yeah.
At how to, but we know how and we know why, unfortunately. Sure. But that's one of the things about this book, that it touches on pieces of American history in its own way. And it's, like I said, it's so layered. So going into it, were you getting full scripts? Were you guys having kind of like meetings and just kind of fleshing out the story, and then, David goes in and just kind of writes the script?
Yes. All the above, man. We did everything from plot. I did a lot of, obviously did all the character design stuff initially. David and Chuck started to pull together the plots, and they would kind of just take a stab at the actual issues. Each draft, they would add something or what have you, and came up with a pretty a sturdy script, I should say, and yeah, well, we just kept going from that standpoint. I think the other thing too, we brought in John Jennings. I don't know if you know the name. You should get him.
I do from the hardcover.
Yeah, you should get him on your podcast. He's great. He's a comics scholar.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, he's huge in that community, and he's great at curating history, but also how comics are used in history.
Sure.
Which is like perfect for kind of what we're doing, because we're using all those elements. And in the back of each individual issue, we had these essays that were from scholars all over the world. This thing got so popular with that community that it became like part of their curriculum. And speaking about education, we were ready for our book to be on the banned list at one point, because so many.
It's not yet.
It's not yet. Man, one day, man. Gotta strive for it. I did have a situation. I don't want to go too far into it. I did have a situation where I was doing a talk somewhere in Florida. I'm not going to say where.
That's fine.
But there you go. Florida should tell you all you need to know. And there was pushback with me coming to speak about it.
Of course.
I spoke about it anyway. Long story short, it all worked out. But
sure,
there was still some there. So, to that point, we were able to use these essays. Our schools and institutions are using these essays in the book itself, but then the essays is really kind of hones in on the academia of it all, learning history and culture, and how those things can really resonate in this medium.
I talk about it a lot in everything I do, in not just the podcast, but everything I do, about the power of that, and how, I'm very aware of who I am, but I'm also Jewish. And with that comes always reminding people like, hey, that every comic character you ever cared about that was a superhero in Marvel or DC was created by a Jewish person.
Yeah.
And Black voices in comics, we have a friend in common, and Big Phil, and what he did with the collections in Black. Like, it's important to point out, like, where this comes from, who creates it, and why that's important.
Yep.
And going back to Matt Baker, I don't know when it came out, like, people realized that this was a Black man creating all of these great covers, but he's super popular now.
Yeah.
And it's important for young people, I think, to understand who's creating the stuff that they're into, so that they can be like, oh, I can do this too.
That's right. I mean, to your point, we met up at the Original Art Expo. Shout out to Kazra and all those guys for pulling that off, and just to be a guest, and to have my work in an exhibition, like a solo exhibition amongst all these other greats.
Yeah.
It was humbling. I was a little insecure. I'm like, oh man, what is that? What am I doing in the middle of Matt Baker pieces, or some original,
or Jack Kirby pieces,
Jack Kirby even, or Stel Freeze and
Billy
Cal,
Graham,
all these guys. Yeah, Billy Graham, obviously Billy Graham, and just being in that space, man, was very humbling, and fulfilling. Even that short talk on Sunday, was it Sunday? I think it was
Sunday. Yeah, because that's
and the amount of people that came in there for that. I mean, you can be doing all kinds of other stuff, at the exhibition, at the expo, and they chose to stand in this room and listen to us babble for an hour. I guess it was close to an hour. It was just really, again, it was just very gratifying in many ways, man. And it empowers you. You know, I always get it energized when I meet fans or whatever at a book signing or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
there's something special when that event or um, that exhibition had that many people interested and willing to listen to hang on every word that you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
That made it's, like I said, it's very gratifying.
I can't even imagine. I mean, I don't know how many people ever listen to me. I don't want to know, but being in front of your art and talking like that's, and like you said, in the presence of art that, was created 70 years ago or 50 years ago. I mean, there was a, second appearance of Black Panther page there,
Yeah.
and, like stuff like that. And it's like, the medium may be, or the collectors and all that, like it may be a small pool of people, there may be, but it's affecting those people. And then like with Phil's exhibition in Pittsburgh, like who knows how many thousands of people saw it,
Mm.
and that will have ripples. And what you've done with Bitterroot, and like it'll have ripples that who knows who's going to see it, what kid's going to be inspired and read it, and read some of the academic stuff about it that'll give more context. Like I haven't dove into all the academic stuff in there, and I'm excited to, because subtext and just themes are big for me. I like reading stuff that gives you more to chew on, more to think about. And man, even just the name, Sangria, is it pronounced Sangria or
Yeah.
Sangarai?
Yeah. Sangria.
The etymology of Sanger is blood, and like
Yeah.
and it's all about family and
Yep.
how deep that goes.
Yep.
So I love paying attention, too much attention to stuff and noticing things. And let's not forget to mention, in
Mm.
next month, the
That's
return of
right.
Bitterroot, the next movement.
There
How
you go.
excited were you to dive into designing steampunk with 60s
Mm.
fashion and design?
Um, Truth be told, we're going even a step further, and we're getting keys and direction from Jack Kirby in the sci-fi aspect of things.
Mm-hmm.
Because we thought, we can do steampunk, you know, proper, or we can. What really makes the most sense in terms of connecting aesthetically from
Mm-hmm.
that era? Um, and the more, I was looking at different influences from that design influences from that time. The Art Deco movement was
Yeah.
front and center. Things are a lot more slick and streamlined. So I'm like, you know what? Who better than to look at the great Jack Kirby and Jim Steranko with the Agents of Shield and what he did with that, and Jack Kirby with all of his Kirby tech, and I'm like, man, and it really got me excited, because it was like our biggest challenge was the success of the first volume,
Yeah.
trying to meet that with a whole new um, level of story. Aesthetically was the first thing, right? Like
Yeah.
how do we capture people's attention? When they see these visuals, will they feel like, oh, this is something, you know, like the subtitle, the next movement. This is the next level of this thing. This ain't the same thing that you got prior.
Yeah.
So that got me super excited. And I just couldn't wait to jump on the board, man. I thumbed through. I got a book over here, man, of Alex Toth.
Mm.
It's called By Design. This
Yeah.
thing is not printed anymore. It's out of print, and I got that bad boy, and I devoured it. Um, and I'm just taking a lot of cues from Toth and Kirby and Steranko, and I'm going to put some monsters behind it, and takes place in the 1960s,
Civil rights movement.
civil rights movement, right smack dab in the middle of it. So we're going to have some stuff to say in this one. You thought the other volume was, message driven. This one is And that's the thing. It's not even message driven, like soapboxy.
No.
We just elements of history. We use the backdrop of history, and then we put the fantastical element in it, and let the story take you for a ride from there.
And I mean, we can talk about heavy-handed messages and certain bands that we like, artists that we like. That's fine. Like, but you can still get your point across and let people, like you said, kind of just figure it out for themselves, because there's no other way to take it. Like, you can't just be like, oh, well, these people get, cursed by hate and become this thing. Yep. Like, we see it in real life, but your art makes the reader kind of be like, all right, well, this, I can't stop turning the page, because like there's so much. Like I said, you're a master of the splash page, and I'm really excited to see all the different aspects and all your art and all of the new monsters and what they're going to look like and all that good stuff, along with feeling like, oh, maybe this will change somebody. I don't, it like I said, watching The Watchmen made me look at American history different. That's if you can't, I can't ask for a thing that would be a better change.
Right. We've had great conversations with people. I mean, wherever we go, from every walk of life, and they all say something very similar. Oh, I didn't know this, and wow, this is so. I'm showing my kids, or I'm picking up every issue because I want to know more about. So it wasn't just the comic. It was more than a comic to a lot of people, and that's what we were trying to go for. I said that to the guys when we first started. I'm like, do you guys realize that this thing can be a work of literature?
Yes.
It's not just the average run of the mill comic book series. If we curate it the right way, we could have something that's long standing.
Yeah, put in schools, banned from schools, put back in schools, banned from schools. Like, like at this point, that's the goal, right? Is to cause a ripple in a good way, teach, give people some entertainment, and, maybe teach a few people a couple of things.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So FOC is Monday.
Okay. FOC is Monday. This will, go pick it up at your LCS, and if they don't order it, tell them to get issue 2 and get the reprint of number 1 when it comes out, second print, right. And then Doom will be in stores next, like 2 weeks, I think, or so. Any cons coming up that we can tell people to see you at, or are you pretty busy and staying home?
Staying home, man. I got to finish this Bitterroot stuff. There's some other things that slowly coming together. Should have an announcement on a DC thing.
Cool. You just posted your Absolute Wonder Woman cover, which is coming out.
Yeah, people got excited on that one. So lots of covers for sure. This announcement should be happening at some point.
Sweet.
Stay tuned for if you dug the Doom. Stay tuned.
All right, and all of Sanford's links will be down below. You can follow him on Instagram. Don't follow him to his house or anything like that. That'd be weird. And I just also want to say, like, you had a run-in with a character at OAX that, I don't know if you completely know, but I apologize that you ran into a guy that looks like me. His name's Comic Tim.
Okay. What is he to you? Like your cousin or something? Or what?
He's a guy that talks about comics as if, you could still buy stuff and make money on it from the 90s. Like he talks about Turok a lot. He's buddies with Bart Sears, who he calls Bert Kmart.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sears and the Kmart. Yeah. I'm looking for the famous people in the comic industry, man. Whoa, man. Whoa.
Dude, I was like,
this guy, he made a Doom comic, man. I think he's Sanford Orange or something like that. Oh, it's green, man.
You mix the colors together and it
makes green, man. Whoa. I didn't, that clip actually is just played right now. And, I just want to apologize. Some people run into him and he just says the wrong thing. I think he called you Sanford Orange because he's just very mixed up. He's a very mixed up cat.
Okay. Special kid.
Yeah. He definitely wore a helmet going to school,
Well, sometimes you gotta look out for the special people, man.
You do.
Can't let them go too far. They might hurt themselves.
No, I keep him locked up in a closet, so it's all good.
Oh man, well,
I feed him. He gets.
Okay, we should do that because
Yeah.
I don't know if you should divulge that information.
He gets a can of tuna and a glass of water every day.
As long as he's happy, fine.
He's got his copy of Turok #1. He's always happy,
and that's all he needs. That and a glass of water.
Well, Sanford, thank you so much for your time. I'm so glad that we had to have a really good discussion, and I would like to do it again at some point. But we got to let you get back to work because we need that bitter root.
Duty calls, man.
Thanks for listening or watching if you're watching. And before we get going, once again, I'm just going to ask you if you could please review the podcast on Apple or Spotify, give it a like on YouTube, drop a comment, anything to help boost this in the algorithm so my visibility gains a little bit. And, I bring great guests and I get to have great conversations. And don't forget to support Sanford's work. The Doom Treasury will be out after you hear this, a week after you hear this. And then Bitterroot starts up again, I think either the week after you hear this or 2 weeks after you hear this. So once again, supporting artists is a great way to keep the art that you like coming to you. So thank you so much. Have a great day. And I'll see you next week on Direct Edition. Peace.